Okay, now we're good. So ReproNim is the Center for Reproducible Neuroimaging Computation. It is an ecosystem of all tools and training and software to be able to have more reproducible neuroimaging analyses. And I would say that they're probably about 10 years ahead of us. I think they've been going for about 10 years longer. So I joined when I was a fellow student program, and in their program, it's a real Ponzi scheme because all fellows just follow the train the trainer model, which is where they train us as fellows, and then our job as fellows is to train other people. And so my training project was to bring all the ReproNim stuff, or like this ecosystem, into rehab. And so that's where we wrote an NIH R25 grant that was submitted and funded in 2022. So that's where it came from. We are now entering, this is our 4th year of ReproRehab. I think one of my favorite things about it is that it's constantly evolving. So we really take your feedback and suggestions seriously. And so we've made a lot of changes over the years. So here are some of the changes. So in the very first year, which I think Jen talked about, we had 8 separate pods. There was 1 TA to every 2 to 3 learners. So it's very small and intimate. On one hand, great, because you get a lot of individual attention. On the other hand, a little bit more awkward, I think. Looking at some of our original TAs who were there for that. A little more awkward, but also I think what we heard from people was that they really wanted to network and they really wanted to be able to interact a little bit more. It was also completely online, so we didn't have this in-person component. It was like right after COVID still, so we weren't so sure. And it was still good, but I think there was like a component that everyone said, like, I wish there were more chances to meet people and to interact. So the next year, we combined it into 4 bigger pods with the assumption that you guys will probably have to split into group meetings that are smaller to accommodate schedules and things like that. In our second year, we added a 24-hour in-person kickoff. I don't really know. I think we were thinking, like, who's going to come to this? Will anybody want to come? But actually, a lot of people came, and it was literally 24 hours. You flew in on Friday, and you left on Saturday. And everyone was like, I think it would be better if it was longer. We made it all this way. And so in the 3rd year, we made it into a 2-day kickoff, which is this. We also added more check-ins during the self-guided portion, which I'll talk about in a minute for those who are less familiar with our structure. And the work blocks and the monthly check-ins are ways to keep you accountable as you go through the program, because we noticed in years 1 and 2 that people would start off really strong in the first all hands meeting, and then only about half the people would show up by the end of the semester, and most would be like, I don't know, life got really busy. So we realized you have to be a little bit more intentional and a little bit more structure for that side. And then this is our 4th year. Some of the changes that we've made are, one, that we made this in-person kickoff very full. I think the biggest change is that we have so many more people this year. And so we have so many more lightning talks, which is really fun. And so many more opportunities that we could trying to move into the in-person part. We also are doing hybrid for the first time because the technology is there now. We added also a 5th pod this year. So like I said last night, this was an extremely competitive year. We were both pleased and surprised and overwhelmed, honestly, by the reaction and the response to the applications this year. So congratulate yourselves. Congratulations to all of you. We had over 100 people apply for the program. And so because of that, we asked ourselves in our leadership meeting, like, do we think that we could add a 5th pod? At first we're like, no, that's crazy. Yes, let's do it. So here we are. That means there's more people. We also tried to move some introduction. So it used to be that you would meet your TA for the first time and talk to them here at the summit. But that was a little bit chaotic because then it would be like, oh, maybe this isn't the right pod for me. And then we would have to shuffle things around. So we tried to do that beforehand this time. But if you still do a discussion, find that maybe this isn't the right pod for you, please let Duncan and Andrew know, and we'll shuffle you to the right pod so you can get the right pod. And like I said, we went from 33 fellows in the beginning to 55. So I think this is definitely our max capacity. Although I say that every year, so who really knows. And then a really fun change is that we now have lead TAs. Yay! So Andrew and Duncan, who you guys met last night, they'll raise their hands. Okay, they've been RTAs since the very first year. They are OG founding TA members. I think they know more about this program than we do at this point. So they are here. We're so excited to have them kind of guide the TAs and then also help you guys to give you a little bit more attention if you should need something. All right, so these are the original goals that we wrote for ReproRehab. And hopefully you know this, but our goal was to build a sustainable national workforce of rehab researchers that have basic data science skills within 5 years. So that started in 2022, and actually the biggest feedback that we got from reviewers was, will anybody want this? And we had to do a needs assessment to show, because I think that in 2022, so long ago, there wasn't so much emphasis on programming. It was like, you can program if you want, but if you do, you probably are an engineer already, you may not need it. Who really needs R, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's been interesting to see that just in the last few years, how rapidly it's changing, and how I feel like now it's more emphasis on like everybody needs to know a little bit about how computers work. The format that hasn't changed too much is that we said we would do this like initial boot camp where we pair people into these pods in small groups so they get hands-on attention with a TA. Then they go into 4 months of self-guided learning. So within the 8 weeks, our goal is to teach you enough that you can learn by yourself. And the rationale behind this, we actually wrote this program for people who had no experience coding whatsoever, who had never written a line of code before in their lives. I think we were really surprised each year when we got people who actually had a lot of coding or had written like whole software packages who still wanted to do the program. And we learned that they also wanted to do the program for community, for networking, and also to learn things like about open science or data sharing or other aspects. So that's been really fun for us. But the original intent was to just give you enough in the boot camp so that you could then go off and start to actually apply it to your own research, and you would know. I mean, those days, our goal is so that you would learn how to troubleshoot, because that was all you really needed. Now, like we said, there's AI, and so it's changing things a little bit, and what our goals for you are, I think. But we'll debate that later today. After the 4 months of self-guided learning, our goal or our hope is that you'll be able to take everything that you've learned, apply it to your own research, and be equipped to be able to teach other people how to do that as well. And then our third goal or aim was to create a rehab-specific data sciences resource website, which I'll talk about in a second as well. Okay, so our first aim was to build up learners. We said that we would recruit 20 learners a year for this program. This year, we've accepted almost 45 learners. Together across the 4 years, we've already trained over 110 people, I think, the learners in this program. So it's been great. We have lots of course materials. The one thing that I want to highlight too, though, is that if you have friends or colleagues or people that you know that applied that didn't get in, we also try to make everything that we do readily accessible. So it's on our GitHub, it's on our YouTube, and we're working on ways for people to be able to like customize their own little boot camps, etc., so that they could do it back at their home institution. Our second aim was to develop the capacity for people to be able to teach and train others. So this is the Ponzi scheme part of our program. So we said we would recruit TAs that would do all these types of things, like be able to teach you guys, create their own curricula, and then create your TA's job. While you're doing your 4-month self-guided learning, your TAs are creating online YouTube tutorials. It used to be that they could create like course that they would teach in their like local environments, like at their universities or whatever. But now everything is so digital that we just said, just do YouTube. Everyone can watch it. You could watch it at your local university, or you could share much more broadly. So that's what they'll be doing. And if you want to see examples, last year we have on our YouTube a playlist of all the TA projects and videos. Okay. Like I said, it started as a purely online or virtual program. Here we are back in the day. Remember Zoom photos, Zoom for photos. And at that time, we had a little bit more of a structured curriculum as well, because we didn't really know how it goes. So we had everybody do the same curriculum for the first few weeks. We talked about intro to ReproRehab, reproducible data management, organization, and open data sets like fair data principles, data sharing, et cetera. And that was our first 3 weeks. what we learned there is that people just want to code right away. And then even in this, we then decided to move these 3-week lectures into this kickoff portion. And even then we learned people just want to code right away. So you will have meetings today with your pods where you can start to code. After that, now we also know that the TAs are great at creating their own materials. So they are going to work with you guys and create your own curricula for your pod that's based on your needs, your wants, and also what they think is good for you. So we'll do that. We have an all hands meeting at the beginning of the program. So we'll do a virtual all hands next week. We'll send a doodle. And then we'll do an all hands at the end of the 8 weeks as well to kind of see what you learned. And then at the end of the 4-month program, we'll do one final meeting to see how everybody did, and you'll report out like what you did or what you learned or what you worked on. Our aim 3 again is this website called ReproRehab DB. It stands for database. What we did is we manually pulled 171 online programming resources for like how to learn Python, how to learn R, how to learn MATLAB, advanced Python, machine learning, etc. Things that we thought would be relevant for the rehab community, as well as 51 open source data sets that we thought were relevant. And we really wanted to make this like Yelp, where you could like not only access the course and the data set, you could also rate it or write a review about it. I would say very few people have used that functionality so far, but we encourage you to do so, because then you could be like, this data set looks promising, but it was actually trash. And then people would know. Well, we won't see that. But this data set could use more structure, or like would like more metadata about what these variables are. There is a 3-minute tutorial, and like I said, we'll make all of this available to you guys afterwards, these slides. But there's a 3-minute tutorial on how to use it. And people actually do use it, I think, because one day it went down and then we found out within an hour. People were like, hey, ReproRehab DB is down. And so, like I said, you can search on the left for course or for data set, and then just put in a few keywords for what you're looking for. This is especially useful for people who don't have data yet. If you're looking for data to work with, so you can write your coding pipeline or prepare your scripts or something like that. Okay, and then you can add
content to that.
Well, yes, you can add content too. Yes, you have to create a login so you can rate, review, and add content, just like on Yelp. All right. And if you don't want to do that, you can also just email us and we will add it for you. Okay, and so in terms of next steps, because this is our 4th year, we've submitted the renewal already to continue ReproRehab for the next 5 years. Because we did our aim 3, which was to create that website, our next aim 3 is to generate a library of content based on all of the tutorials and teaching materials that have been created that institutes or universities or really anyone could use to create their own AI-assisted pod curriculum, so that we can make it even broader. And then another thing is that a lot of people have asked, and I just want to say thank you to everyone, all of our returning alum and fellows. We put out a call for anyone who had been in ReproRehab to write a letter of support for us. And we got so many really beautiful letters. So that was really nice. Thank you. And then a lot of people asked how to harmonize or share data or wanted hands-on help with this. Like, I think as people have gone through the program, we get a lot of questions about like, oh, I actually do have this data set from my thesis work that I want to be able to share. How do I do it? And we've partnered with people on their grants to be able to do this. But it led us to realize that there's a really big need in the rehab community to have some sort of like data standardization for things that don't already exist. And to be able to help people have an easy way to manage their data and then share it within rehab specifically. So that's why I'm pleased to announce DAPR, the Data Science and Analytics for Precision Rehabilitation Center. Woo! This is a brand new, hot off the press, newly funded P50 center. We are one of 6 centers that were chosen by NCMRR, which is the National Center for Medical Rehabilitation Research. And our goal will be to help people generate large harmonized rehab data sets so that you can apply machine learning or AI to it. So I think Lexi was saying the other day that one of her her project for the bootcamp was just to organize the data. Yes, that is notoriously the hardest part of AI. When people talk about AI, it's not the like actual like model or whatever. That's maybe like a few lines of code, maybe an hour, maybe 20 minutes. But the real work is the hours, days, weeks that you spend getting the data into a computer readable format so that you can then apply any sort of algorithm to it. So the point of Dapper is to help people be able to do that more easily and more efficiently and build a culture around that. So we really are relying on all of you to help do that as well. So just to put it into perspective, between Dapper and ReproRehab, our goal, our hope is that both programs will continue simultaneously. I think ReproRehab aims to get people AI and machine learning ready by teaching you the skills about how computers work, et cetera. It's our hands-on training arm. And Dapper aims to get data, AI, and ML ready. And when you have people and data, then together you can do. This was a figure from the grant that we put in. It has so many parts to it. So it's going to have a research project where we're going to build out this Dapper data schema for all rehab data in the world. And then we'll get it so that it can be AI ready. There's a resource core that Keith is going to lead. So he's going to continue his fine work with his tutorials and his statistical teaching and consulting, but in a much broader sense. So there will be more tutorials, videos, webinars, and living guides, as well as hands-on support and service for people who want to come in for consultations about how do I get this data set AI ready. There's an admin core just to keep everything running, and then a community engagement and outreach core. So we will, we have a community advisory board that is composed of people with the lived experience of stroke, cerebral palsy, spinal cord injury, and Parkinson's. And they will kind of inform and make sure that the things that we're doing are really what those conditions would like. And then we also will have a hybrid national conference at some point. And our goal is to also have annual hackathons. So if you like this and you like the coding part of this, look out for the hackathons. We're trying to do them adjacent to other national meetings, so you don't have to take a separate trip. But we'll just be coding in the spirit of brain hacks. So we really fun. All right. Okay. So that is past, present, future. Now back to logistics. So this is my for animations. So just so you know, for those who are unfamiliar, everything, all of our course materials and lectures are on YouTube. So even these types of lectures, like I'm going to give a lecture in a little bit about data management and reproducibility, that's on YouTube already. We also have anything that's like hands-on is on GitHub. And we're working on putting all of the TA materials from the past years onto GitHub as well, so you can find those. Like I said, everything that you're searching for could be on ReproRehab, and anyone can access these. So please feel free to share them out. We have a website, we have a Twitter account, a mailing list, a YouTube GitHub, and a Google Calendar that Ashley has shared. That Ashley has shared. That's really important because we put all of our work blocks on there. So for those who aren't familiar with work blocks, it's just an hour that you set aside on your calendar. You show up. I think every TA leads theirs differently. Every TA is asked to do at least one per week, and they do it differently. I think I'm more awkward. So when everybody shows up at the hour, I say hi, say your name and what pod you are and what you're going to work on. So everyone says that briefly, and I say, all right, get to work. And then at 5 minutes to the end of the hour, we report back on what we did. So it's just like a little bit of virtual accountability. Devin tells jokes in his. Just a comedy hour with Devin. But everyone, you know, some people have check-ins in the middle, etc. But it's a fun way for you guys to get to know people outside of your pods. You just meet random people, whoever shows up for that hour. And then if you can't make a work block, you can also that week create your own, and people can come to yours, and you just add it to the count. Okay. Like we've been talking about, the community really lives on Slack. So because after this, we're going to go virtual, please get a Slack account and get familiar with it. If you're not sure how to use it, let one of us know and we'll show you so that it's easier to show you. we attend work blocks. Your mandatory attendance to one work block per week. We will send you a stern email if you are not attending work blocks, just to make sure that you're still keeping up with the program. But you can attend more than one. So it's a minimum of one, but the maximum is unlimited. So we have had people attend many. Okay, and then we also have a code of conduct. So, I mean, it's basically like, please be kind to other people. I think hopefully this doesn't have to be said anymore. Like, it's 2025 now, but who knows? So be respectful, respect other people's privacy, be considerate of other people's participation, be aware of your own biases, use welcoming and inclusive language, don't be a bystander. If you have any sorts of problems with code of conduct, please let me know. I would like to know and I would like to as soon as possible. Don't wait until it's a bigger problem. I would say we've never had a problem, knock on wood, because everyone here tends to be really friendly. But yes, please let us know. Okay, and then in terms of next steps, so where do we go after here? So our boot camp starts next week. You will start meeting with your TAs, you will start all of that. In the interim, we also have a ReproRehab social that will happen at SFN. That's going to be on Monday, November 17th. So feel free to mark your calendars. It's going to be at Tom's Watch Bar, which is exciting. It has over 100 screens. But it's just a convenient location that holds a lot of people next to the convention center. Wear your ReproRehab buttons to SFN. If you don't, I will just put one on you. So, and then after that, you'll go into 4 months. So we always try to finish the program before Thanksgiving because we know things get a little willy-nilly after that. But we will reconvene again the week of April 3rd, and you'll do monthly meetings with your pods in between then, just to check in on how the self-guided portion is going. Okay. Oh, okay. Any questions about all of that? I have more to say, but that's the logistics, the history, and the why, what we're doing here. Yes.
I'm putting on my calendar. Week of April 3rd to Friday. So is it the week of or the
It's unclear at the moment. Huh? That week. It'll be that week. We'll send a doodle out for a video, and it will be that week. And if you can't attend, then you just record a video. Yeah. Actually, record a video no matter what, and you attend. Yes.
Oh yeah, I was about to ask, like, follow up for like that week. It's like virtual. What like one day, and we're like all gonna like present, or is it just with like our groups or?
Well, it's an interesting question because this is our largest group. So we historically have done it in like a 2-hour session where everyone says like for a few minutes what they did and what they worked on. I have to do the math about like maybe you have like 1 minute to say what you did, but at the end of the program, you also will turn in a written 1-page report about what you did, and we'll send out that template for you as well. And then you'll also send out, you'll make like a short 5-minute video of what you did. And we compile those videos together and put them on YouTube so that when people ask us, what do people do at ReproRehab? We can say, you can watch this 3-hour-long video. Yeah. Any other questions? Excited? Yes, okay. Thanks, Dave. Okay, great. Okay, if you have other questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go straight into data science and open science to improve rigor in research. So, you know, we've already talked about a lot of these types of things, but what is the reproducibility crisis? How can we use data science to address reproducibility? And how can we use open science to address replicability? So this is going to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty. This is a question that I like to ask just to see where people stand. And I think I used to think it was more black and white a few years ago, but I'm not so sure now. So how many people think that scientific reproducibility and replicability is a problem? I put in stroke research, which put in rehab research. How many people think it's not a problem? How many people are not sure? One honest man. Yes, I'm starting to turn a corner where I'm feeling more hopeful. So let's see. But I think, like Keith talked about yesterday, reproducibility is really the ability for someone else or yourself to reproduce an experimental paradigm given the same data. So, for instance, If he gave me his data set and he gave me his paper and I read his paper, is there enough detail in there for me to implement the same experiment and get the same results? And the key there is that a lot of times in our method sections, we write some things, but there are so many assumptions that there's not enough space to write. And that's where programming and coding and just, you give someone the paper, but you also give them your code. It fills in so many gaps to make it more reproducible. In terms of replicability, it's the ability for someone else or yourself to obtain consistent results given the same experiment. So if Keith gives me the paper and then I collect my own data with that same experiment, can I get the same results? So that's kind of a different problem about is what he's finding like able to carry over into another population? That gets to generalizability as well. So in the past, there's been so much attention to this. They found, for instance, that 70% of scientists have tried and failed to reproduce another person's experiments. In psychology, they actually did these, they put millions of dollars into replication attempts, and they were only able to replicate 39 out of 100 attempts. So that was very concerning. And so there's a few factors that can contribute to this problem. For reproducibility, I think one of the biggest factors is underutilized reproducible methods. So first, there's human error in manual processes. So if you're keeping your data in Excel sheets and then you don't know which Excel sheet you used in the end, or you did some manual calculations in a few cells, but maybe you didn't apply it at all, there's just a lot of places where errors can occur. There's also inconsistent record keeping across different team members. So that you might do it, but then you graduate and that gets passed down to the next student and they take over the project and analysis, and then it gets all kind of busy. And so that's where data science, we hope, will be very helpful. So this is, again, a definition of data science. It's just what we do anyways. It's math, statistics, and combining it into some sort of reproducible code. And one thing that I've learned, so I run what's called the Enigma Stroke Recovery Working Group. This is a consortium of over 100 researchers across lots of countries. And every time a research group does a stroke MRI study, we partner with them and they give us that data and we harmonize the data with our existing database so that we can pull all the data together. So now we have over 2,000 high resolution MRIs, and then we can ask questions with a bigger data set and find trends that we may not be able to detect with smaller data. But the important thing about this is I have seen now how different labs collect and store their data. And there is no one way to do it. There's no one right way, I would say, but there's also no one consistent way. So we get all sorts of things. And I think that is kind of what's led us to this point, to be like, maybe there is a way that we can do this differently or try to do things in a more harmonized way prospectively as well. And so that's why I feel like education on data science and programming principles early on, even if you're not going to write code for your stuff, knowing how a computer is going to read your data, even that can be really helpful to make it more useful and AI-able for the future. So with this, what we like to talk about and what we will talk about is data management using consistent formatting, using data analysis, using executable scripts. So this is like using R instead of SPSS or SAS, sorry to those who love that. Just because R first is free, you can pass it along from one person to another, you can specify the version very specifically, etc. And then Python as well. And then version control across different team members and analyses. So that's GitHub, which Joan is going to lead a tutorial on right after this. And the real end goal, I think, is a whole reproducible paper. So ReproNim has some great examples. I like to show this paper as an example. This is a paper that our friend Anisha Keshavan did. So it's a normal paper. It was published in Frontiers, but it also has the data and the code embedded in it so that you could actually toggle with the data and rerun the analyses under different assumptions yourself in the paper. And the best thing that I like about this is Anisha made all the code to do this available as well. So even that's open source. So the reproducible paper itself is reproducible. So it's just an example of how it makes data a lot more transparent. And you can see if you choose certain assumptions or you get rid of certain outliers, how it would change your data analysis. I also wanted to highlight a replication success by Andrew. Whoop, whoop. He just posted this 3 days ago, but with I think one of his learners, for review. two learners from ReproRehab in the same year or different?
Same year.
Same year, but two people. They did a replication attempt where they were able to successfully replicate a study finding that they found in one paper in another sample. They call that a ReproRehab replica success. But also what I like about it is that he also made the data available, the analysis available, and everything is in a very fancy app you could look at. So by doing this type of code, you can not only do your analysis and get your paper published, but you could also share it. You can make it something that other people could try to replicate later, etc. Okay. All right. I'm going to say a few things about data management. Some of you that are more advanced may already know this, but some of you who maybe have not thought about it that much may not have considered this before. So it's important that you plan to keep your data in a format that can be easily shared with anyone at any time. But what that really means is you need to think about your data and your analyses before you collect it and then revise it while you're collecting it. So what we see a lot is people did their experiment and then come to us with their messy folders because they didn't realize or they didn't know what it's going to look like. It's really important to try to plan it out ahead of time, test it out with one subject's data, with your pilot data, and then revise it as you go. So data management, I think when it comes to managing data that's yours, it means it's reporting down what your experimental protocol is, because even though you know it now, you may not know it in 5 years. Understanding and sticking to consistent file naming conventions, and then recording metadata that reminds you what those file naming conventions were. So what we like to do for experimental protocols, usually like in our lab, we'll have like a brief protocol where we say, okay, this is the study I'm gonna, collect data about how somebody learns in virtual reality doing a visual motor adaptation task. We have a brief protocol that has all the steps, the IRB that we use, the payment amount, everything. Then a detailed protocol that has everything, including what we say to participants, because that even can change across experimenters. Then we have a second person review it to make sure that they can replicate it the way that you detailed it. A lot of times when you watch someone else try to do it after you've given it to them, they're like, what do I do here? Or the interpretation is like totally different because of how it's written. So just testing that out and then keeping it somewhere accessible that would last like a lab Google Drive or Cloud Drive or OneDrive or whatever. You can also consider using an organizational framework such as Open Science Framework or something similar, because that also would then allow you to share those things with the rest of the community when you're. In terms of file and naming structures, so do people know that a capital S is different than a lowercase s to a computer? You don't have to answer that out loud. If you didn't, now you know. So for instance, subject one, these could all be subject one, but these are all completely different to a computer, so it will not read it the same. So you have to choose consistent capitalization, consistent spaces, no slashes, no symbols. Pick one and go with it. And then we also encourage to have a consistent number of digits. So that means anticipating if you're going to collect 0 to 9, like single digit number of subjects, or double digit, like up to 99 subjects, or triple digit up to 999 subjects. Because there's padding that happens and it will be a little bit harder for you to be able to pull out the subjects that you need if you have, for instance, subject 1, but then later on you have subject 13. Okay. It's also important to write dates so it becomes logically organized. So, like to us, like January, February, like those words make sense, but to a computer, it will not organize it in the actual temporal order. And then if you have multiple time points on the same day, make sure that you add something like hour, minute, second, so that it logs all of that information. These days, I think a lot of this happens already, but it's, I don't know, always good to say. And then just like easily, you can create templates of subject folders that you can then copy and populate. So you have one template folder, and then after the first subject data is collected, you analyze and refine your file structure. Then you just use that and populate it as you go. Again, these days, this can all be automated, but it is important just to have something that's really consistent this time. So this is where BIDS comes in handy, and I didn't know that BIDS also had like a movement.
But it has an extension called
Movement.
BIDS Motion.
BIDS Motion, yes, there's you. So I think there's also now bids for EEG data as well, and bids for
EG, MEG,
MEG.
even GDT.
Okay.
Which is it's another conversation. That's a problem a little bit how far we improve it.
Yes, okay.
Good question.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you can see it as an example of how to organize data. And I think that's what we're hoping to do in Dapper, is to take bids and extend it to rehab data as well. Okay, and then finally, it's also important to have a metadata file that describes where everything is, what subgroup analyses are performed, what the groups are even. So for instance, sex sometimes is coded as 1 or 2, but then it's like, oh, what's 1? What's 2? So making sure that you keep track of that. For us, we get the Fuglemeyer, a lot of different groups that study stroke collect something called the Fuglemeyer. It's a measure of motor impairment. But occasionally a group will say, actually, we don't agree with the reflex component of this, so we took it out. So their Fuglemeyer is out of a total of 60 points, or everyone else's is out of 66 points. And harmonizing that data gets complicated. So we make sure to note that for each site now, what their measures are, what are the max, and if they did anything kind of unstandard. And then we normalize all the data to the maximum possible instead of taking the score. So anyway, just think of this as your detailed method section, so you can revisit in 5 years and know why you did it. And then you can record this in a regular Word document or anything, but you could also record it in something called a JSON file, which was talked about. I think Devin talked about it with pickles and JSONs. It's a way that you can kind of keep text and data in a way that's both human readable, but also computer readable. Okay. Any questions about this part?
I just got a little lost in the last slide. I can't really read the words from back here, which was my seat choice. Is this like a data dictionary, or you're saying like you're describing your methods in a, I just don't understand. Like,
yes, thanks. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a data dictionary. It's both. I mean, I think the point is less specific. It's just like, make sure that whatever assumptions or choices you're making, you have a file that also tells you about those.
so like you have a naming convention, but there's a file that tells you why you chose that naming convention.
Yeah, or what the naming convention is.
Okay.
So like if your options are like sex 1, 2, what's 1 and what's 2? And like first we have like Legion Hemisphere 1, 2, like which one's 1? You're like making sure that somewhere like it makes sense to you at the moment. If you were to pass that data to someone else, they would need to know the metadata, like what do these variables mean?
And then what would be, it could be a Word document or it could be a JSON file, like
Yes. Yeah.
How would you make that decision? How you're just anything that you know how to go back to?
Yes. I mean, I would recommend a JSON file, but if you're not familiar with JSON files, then you could use a Word document first and make that one of your projects. Yeah, so I think my point here is more like big picture in terms of like, just make sure you're keeping metadata somewhere. But the actual implementation, we can get into the nitty-gritty for like your particular project. That's something you can talk to your TA about for like your project and what you want to do and how are you going to access it. So I think there's like a best practices side, but then there's also a what will you actually do side. And it's like whatever is actually accessible to you and nice. Yes.
I'm curious, I don't know, like, I think yesterday RedCap was mentioned, and I struggle with like what lives in RedCap versus how I organize some of what you're saying. I'm curious, like, do you have any resources you recommend, or just like troubleshoot, I don't know, big picture guidance on that?
That is a very good question.
You did like a whole RedCap thing, didn't
Can.
you? Have any of the teams, I thought some of the teams have worked with people specifically on RedCap, yeah.
Oh, I mean, I've worked through it and then helped a few other people with RedCap. So you can create your own variable names for each point that you're collecting. So I always start with the data dictionary. So I define what I'm collecting and then decide what I'm going to name it. And then I set up my RedCap with those specific names. And if you want a tutorial on how to do that, I'm more than happy to.
I don't use RedCap myself, so I don't know. But there's lots of people here who do, which is why this community is so great.
I used it.
What?
Oh, you're talking about when I used Red, yeah.
Yes.
And I was like one time at which.
Oh. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, and then we'll talk just briefly about replicability a little bit more. Some of the issues that lead to, I think, if you're not Andrew, with some great learners who are willing to do the experiments with you and work with you. I think a lot of times what happens that leads to problems in replicability is that first there's a positive publication bias. So what that means is that, if you did a study with 10 subjects and I did a study with 10 subjects, and we did the same study, but you got significant results, you're going to publish that in Nature. And I'm not going to publish it at all. I'm just going to shelve it away and move on with my life. So there's this positive publication bias where only things that are significant usually end up getting published, because that just makes a lot more sense. But realistically, in order to overcome replicability, we really need really large data sets. We need to be able to replicate it across data sets, across subsets of data sets. But that runs into a lot of logistical limitations. So there's limited money, time, and participant availability. So ideally, we would have 1,000 subjects for our analyses, but that would take you your entire career, and that's not very efficient. So some solutions to this also include big data and open science. And so, like he said, it's not really big. Sometimes we call it large data or bigger data. It's just bigger than you would have had. So it's a little bit more reliable. And open science, for those who don't know, is a movement to make scientific research and its dissemination accessible to everybody. So it includes things like publishing, open research, campaigning for open access, but also like a lot of open data sharing to make things not behind a paywall. So open science helps to get across, overcome a lot of positive publication biases and logistical limitations by testing samples either from retrospective data sets that have been archived that you can then rerun an analysis on, or pooled samples across both retrospective and or prospective data sets, like what we do at Enigma. We take lots of different people's samples and pull them together, or large prospective data sets. So those usually require like billions of dollars in government funding, but things like the UK Biobank. Are you guys all familiar with the UK Biobank? No, some. Okay, so the UK Biobank is one of the best examples because they took, is it 100,000? More? A million? 100,000. 100,000 people in the UK. It's because they have a national health system, so they can access all the data. But they took this, no digs, but they took the data. They have imaging, genetics, clinical, like blood samples for some of them. It's just like so detailed, but it's 100,000 people, and they made it open access. So this is a huge treasure trove. As soon as the UK Biobank, the first release came out, like I think there were just like so many papers started coming out using that data, because all of a sudden you could explore in a really diverse English population, but like a large English population of different research questions. So again, it's just sharing what you have, whether it's published. We also encourage sharing of unpublished data. So maybe I had those 10 subjects and I got null results. I could still share it as a data archive so that, ultimately it could all be pulled together. And the goal is to improve the reproducibility and reliability, and also to build capacity of the scientific community. So especially for trainees that may not have their own data, a lot of trainees, especially during COVID, it kind of shot up where they started to use these like open data sources because they couldn't collect their own data. One of the data sets that we've shared is one that we call Atlas. It's anatomical tracings of lesions after stroke. We have done 2 releases, and the first one, I think we released about like 300 stroke MRIs with manually segmented lesion masks. We had to do it for ourselves for Enigma anyways, and we said, well, while we're doing it, we'll also share it with the community. And then we kept tracing, and we recently released 1,200 of these. And honestly, like, as much as I like to think that my science is impactful, I think just sharing the data is the most impactful thing that I've probably done, because that takes on a life of its own. So with this, like, people are able to develop new algorithms, test new methods, do all sorts of things that we didn't even anticipate. And I think it's been much more rewarding than I anticipated. It is a lot of work, I'll say that. And when you share data, you do open yourself up to scrutiny of people being like, this isn't right. And then you have to fix it, but it makes it better. And I do want to just emphasize that like data sharing can be really great, especially to advance research. Okay, so just in terms of what types of data are available now. So hopefully just who has heard of the NICHQ DAS repository? Okay, a few. All right, so this actually is very important for everyone in this room because this is where NCMRR wants you to share your data. It's a NIH-funded data repository. So all data technically has to go here now. I think now that they've put these NIH data sharing rules into place. But it's something where I think it'll be growing and become more popular in the future. There's also like an archive of data on disability to enable policy and research that you can put your data on. You can put different levels of access to your data too. So for Atlas, for instance, we have one version that we used an algorithm to scrub the face of the MRIs, and we made that one legally access. So you just click yes on a Google form, and then it gives you the password to access the data. But we also put a version where we didn't take the face off, because sometimes for processing the MRIs, people prefer that version of data. And we put it on ICPSR with a data use agreement. So it's like a longer contract that people have to sign and then they submit it. So there's different ways that you can share your data. There's also OpenSim. These are some of the open source data sets that are available. So these are more in brain imaging. Like I said, I feel like brain imaging is maybe a little bit ahead of rehab, but it gives us a blueprint for where we want to go. So things like the Human Connectome Project. This is a prospective coordinated effort where they have recruited and brought in thousands of people to get scanned on the same scanners, do the same tests, etc. And then they made that data open access so you can have it for free. There's also the UK Biobank, like I said, and then well, I don't know how all of us is doing. You guys know? Okay, who here's heard of all of us? All right, a few really proud hands. Are you working with all of us data
No,
now?
I tried to work with it a little bit.
Yeah.
So 414,000 participants,
Yeah.
sleep, physical activity data, questionnaires, the genome,
Yeah.
whole genome, what?
Yes. Yes. All of us may be very promising. The goal was for the US government to have data from up to 1 million people in the US. I think they were like, oh, 100,000 UK, we'll do 1 million. I think one challenge with it is that they have to keep the data centralized. So you have to apply for access to a specific platform to use it. And then you have to use only the tools that they give you. So I was like a beta tester for this. And I was like, this is challenging.
Same thing with UKB.
Oh, UK Biobank too? Oh, okay, yes. So anyways, the skills you learn in ReproRehab will help make it less challenging. But just know that these are some of the constraints about accessing so much data. But I will say for Human Connectome Project, you can apply and then they will mail you a hard drive. At least that's how it used to be. They would mail you like a physical hard drive with the data on it. And then there's a lot of community specific efforts. Again, my background is brain imaging, so this is what I know, but you guys may know of other resources for kinematics and movement data. In brain imaging, there's something called Open Neuro where people upload their neuroscience data sets. So these are just like random studies and you can search them and then you can easily access them. And these are all, NIPFIC is something that Kennedy founded and runs. It's a collaboratory, it's a clearinghouse. It has not only software, data, atlases, etc., but it's all in one place. So lots of sharing. And then, like I said, here's ReproRehab DB. These are the people that created it. There was our previous program manager, Corley, and 2 summer computer science students who then left. So that's why it has not been further developed much, but I think it works pretty well as is. And if you want to add your data set, or if you create a course or tutorial that you want us to add, please let us know. We're happy to expand it. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is that a lot of times, especially in the rehab community, what we get asked is like, oh, I actually want to talk about something really specific. I really want to study, like, I put out a call once, like, do you want certain types of data? We can try to find it for you. And someone's like, yeah, I want myelin water fraction MRI with behavior. And someone else was like, I'd like EEG during FES evoked movements. And I was like, okay, this is not, this does not exist. These are like so niche and specific. So I thought I would talk just a second about collaborative data sharing. So maybe what you need is not something that's on a repository, but what you could do is reach out to somebody who has data that you're looking for, like a collaborator, a frenemy, whatever, and suggest a collaborative project with the data that they've already collected. So if you do that, I just want to give you some general guidelines. We typically recommend that you try to collaborate on the data, and that means that you include them in the authorship, so you don't just take the data from them and run. And there's a benefit to that in that you get really useful insight on the data with regard to how you use it. So maybe they intended it for one thing and you were going to do a different analysis, and you tell them and they're like, oh, actually it's all, I don't know, like children who play the piano. And like that was nowhere in the paper, but it was just something that they knew. There's some like ingrained knowledge. So it's helpful to work with people closely when you're using their data. Understand that nobody's data is perfect. And then you could also offer to maybe organize their data into a data archive that you publish. So there's lots of places now that you can publish data sets. Journals like Nature has one called Scientific Data that is quite popular. It has a really decent impact factor. So it's not totally like considered quote unquote a waste of your time if your focus is on productivity metrics. There's also Giga Science, et cetera. And these are data descriptor papers that are really well cited, but allow you to kind of get credit for organizing and sharing data. And then if you want to share data, we suggest mostly that you think about IRB and consent language. So making sure that your IRB currently says things like your de-identified data may be shared in the future as part of an archive or with other researchers. And then of course, practice good data management, so it's easy to share when you're done. There's also a lot more that we have on ReproRehab and on ReproNim about fair data principles that I think we'll be talking about later as well. And we have a lot of lectures on it. So lots to do. And finally, we have a whole playlist on the NIH data sharing plan and mandates. So this came out early on. I probably should update it because I assume it's changed by now. But when it first came out, we did a lot of webinars with the NCMRR program officer who was going to be in charge of data sharing. At that time, it was like, well, what do we need to put in this data sharing plan? She's like, we don't know, but we'll know when it's wrong. And then we'll let you know. So I think there's still some flux as they see this start to roll out, but I think it's definitely starting to shape up now. So be prepared to share your data. Okay, so we talked about that. And then also there's also an element of data transfer that you may have to consider. So in our experience with Enigma, we've received like hundreds of data sets. Some institutions require a data transfer agreement, some don't. I think it's becoming increasingly common that they require one, but I also think that offices are becoming more capable of doing it and more used to it. So it used to take like a year to get a data transfer agreement in place, and now it's a little bit faster. Okay. These are just places where you could share data, all of the repositories you could share it on. You can also share your data on Open Science Framework. It's a little more approachable. And then you can also share data, smaller amounts of data on GitHub, for instance, but GitHub also lets you share your code. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. This is